Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Torkel Odegaard to announce Grafana 4.0 and go over some of the highlights. Please give him a round of applause.
Yes, I'm going to talk about what's new in Grafana v4. And for those who might have missed it, we actually released the stable version of v4 yesterday. So something to look forward to when you get home is to try the new release. So the biggest question sort of many might have regarding alerting is, are we finally going to add alerting? As you saw, alerting is in, and some great looking dashboards there, and good feedback as well on Grafana. Hope to that sort of feedback resonates with a lot of stuff we've heard elsewhere, and we'll definitely look into a lot of that going forward. But back to alerting, this has been sort of the monkey on our back for almost close to 2 years now. People have been sort of repeatedly requesting, so when is alerting ready? In the beginning it was sort of quite courteous, so can we have alerting please? And to the point where it's sort of starting to become a little bit more more contentious. I mean, we started on alerting a long time ago in terms of mock-ups, design, discussions, and Dieter Pladnik talked about alerting at last year's GrafanaCon, just showing off our initial design ideas for it. But then sort of all the things about sort of, we felt there was a big need to revamp the plugin system and modernize the code base, and that became a priority. And other things sort of kept pushing it. But eventually we came a point where we were had just released the beta of 3.0 when we kind of felt that we need to start working on this, and that's what we did. So we've been working, implementation-wise, we've been working on this since late March. And it's finally ready and available in this last stable release. So, I mean, it's our initial take on alerting. It's going to sort of grow and expand and become more rich in the future. So our initial sort of take on it was to keep things simple to start with, and then look at sort of, okay, what are the problems people are having? What more do they need from the alerting system? So let me just jump to Grafana and demo it. And you'll see sort of how it will work. So let's see. So our initial sort of idea for alerting was to keep it simple and utilize the fact that Grafana is a visual tool. You want to define your alert rules visually using your existing panels. So we started just sort of, okay, we have a graph panel. I want to create an alert rule for it. I want to set thresholds. And that's what you can do now in v4 by going to the alert tab in the graph panel. You can specify a name for the rule and how often this rule will be evaluated by the backend. So all the processing and scheduling and execution is handled in the Go backend, which means that the front-end plugins, the data source front-end plugins had to be sort of re-implemented in the backend. We sort of tried different ways to do it with sort of having JavaScript code being executed in the backend, but we were so pressed we wanted really to deliver something stable and good. And we kind of, okay, it wasn't that hard to re-implement the Graph5 InfluxDB and Prometheus and OpenTSDB parts in the Go backend. So that's what we did, and so everything is now written in Go for those parts. Anyway, you set how frequently this alert rule will be evaluated, and then you can sort of specify a threshold. So let's set the threshold there, for example, and let's look at more recent data. So you can see here conditions. We have a single condition right now that is a query condition. So that's the only query. That's the only condition type you can add. We plan to add more conditions, more condition types, but initially we only have a query condition. And it works by sort of specifying a query by just using the letter. So no matter what data source you use, every query gets a letter in Grafana, and that was deliberately designed sort of way back in when we did 3.0, just to have a unified way that all data sources specify metric queries. And so we can, so that all can be referred to in the alerting tab. And you can specify also the time range for this alert condition, or the query that is going to be getting the data back. And of course, you can add multiple conditions and different sort of ways to reduce those data points back to a single value that is going to be sort of compared against this threshold. So let's save this, and hopefully we'll get an alert. Oh, okay, switch to green, because apparently the threshold was passing at that evaluation. It hopefully should be switching to red. Oh, this is actually. I'll switch to another server that's not fluctuating. Hopefully this will be turning red now. So it's being evaluated constantly by the backend and checked against that threshold. And we can see that the panel, so the heart is red, the panel has this red pulsating background. We can see that these annotation events are created whenever the alert rule changes state. You can also look at that in the state history. Another really sort of useful thing when you're working with alerting is that you can test the rule and look at sort of all the queries being sent. You can look at all the exact data points being returned from the queries and how they are being reduced to a single value, and how the conditions are sort of being evaluated as well, to really sort of understand why an alert rule might not be failing, or why it's not what you expect. But I mean, alerting is not very useful without notifications. So in this case, I have set up a notification that is going to go to the official sort of GrafanaCon Slack channel. I'm not sure how many of you are in that channel, but I've specified a Slack notification that will send alert notifications to that channel. And we have notifications of different types. We have Slack, we have PagerDuty, we have webhook. I think we merged, so after the stable release, we merged VictorOps, and we're going to sort of constantly be adding more notification types. But within the stable release, these are the ones we have right now. But of course, that's going to be expanded upon in future releases. So I now need to get back to my alert rule to add that notification. And for that, we have the alert list page, which will show you all the alert rules you have defined. You can also sort of filter down this list. And from here, we can also pause rules from being sort of evaluated. They will sort of be removed from the scheduler. We don't have a silence mechanic yet. That's something we will add in the next release. So we're just trying to keep it as simple as possible for this release, but we'll, as I said, make alerting a lot more feature-rich as time goes on. But let's jump back into our alert rule. In this case, I want to sort of make it green again, so we can have an alerting notification. I'll switch server again because these are fluctuating too much. Okay, let's go to the notification tab. We can here add our GrafanaCon Slack notification. You can sort of type a message, hello, GrafanaCon. And one thing that I didn't mention is that the alert rules are saved when you save the dashboard, but they are actually extracted into a separate table in the backend and also indexed and handled separately. But you work with them and you save them along with the rest of the dashboard they live in. So to update this dashboard, I have to now save. But before that, I'm going to move the threshold down again. And if I manage to get this done. Damn. Oh, okay, let's see. Come on. I don't know how sort of the Wi-Fi here is, if it's going to work or not. Come on. Yay! So as you can see, you can actually get full images of the panels in your notifications, and this is sort of done by the backend sort of panel rendering, which is done through Phantom.js. And to get it available in Slack, the image has to be publicly accessible. So to handle that, Grafana has a sort of external image store, so it will render the panel and upload it, in this case, to S3, with a sort of with name, and you can just have a very short retention sort of storage for that S3 bucket, just so Slack can access it and show it in the notification. But all of that works, and you can see sort of that the backend 01 is causing this alert, and you can click here, and it will sort of be redirected to that panel with the alert tab open. And an important thing to mention that is that in this case, this query only returned one series, but you could sort of have a query that returned multiple series, and the alert condition would be evaluated for each series. So if any series is failing, you would get an alert. The only thing that the only caveat, or sort of the only thing to mention, is that we don't track state on a per series level yet. We want to do that. So if one server if you have a query in this case that returns 4 series and one is failing, you will get an alert, and then another one is failing, and it doesn't change state. The alert is still alerting because the previous evaluation back in 1 was alerting, and now back in 2 is also alerting. You won't get another alert for that. So we will want to have an option for people to sort of, I want to be alerted on each, sort of keep track of each state on each series individually. That's something we want to add in the future, to make it sort of easier to work with generic rules that sort of cover a whole range of series. And you want to sort of be alerted for each series individually. Okay, that is mainly the focus of the alerting in this release. We also have some options for how to handle queries that don't return any data or null values. You can then specify sort of how the alerting engine should process that. Should it sort of switch the alert rule to alerting state, or should it just keep the last state? Or in this case, the default is actually a no data state. We also have sort of an option for how you want to treat execution errors or timeouts. If you have a very sort of unreliable data source that sort of sometimes times out, you might kind of want to ignore execution errors. Let's see, I had one more thing. So our plan going forward is as well is to add other types of conditions. So conditions like time of day, or conditions that can include 2 queries that can compare the same metrics against different time ranges, or do interesting things. We also support, of course, sort of more types of sort of threshold conditions where you can look at the outside range, where you can sort of have a green zone, or you can have revert it to have an inside is within range. So there's different options there for the threshold condition. If you have questions on the learning, we can do that after the rest of the demo. Just try not to forget them. So, I mean, 4.0 is mainly about alerting, but we have some other cool features in 4.0. One of them is the ad-hoc filters. And this is a feature that kind of opens up a new type of dashboard that is more of an exploratory nature. So this is looking at Elasticsearch log data. So can, in this case, group by different properties. So let's sort of group the requests by which extension and URL, or you can look at top IPs or top user agent. So this is just a normal, something you can do today or in 3.1. Just use a variable in the Elasticsearch terms field. So you can sort of, from a dashboard variable, you can change how the data is grouped in the Elasticsearch query. But one thing that has been missing is to be able to do ad hoc filtering on this data. So to be able to say, okay, well, I'm interested in only request with the GIF extension. Have they decided how you pronounce that yet? GIF or? Oh, GIF, yeah. I think GIF as well. Anyway, you can stack these and add multiple filters to further sort of filter down the data you're looking at. And the nice thing about this is this filter is automatically applied to both these queries. So you don't have to do anything within the actual query to take advantage of this. The thing you control this by is you set up a new type of template variable called ad-hoc filters, and you just specify a data source name, so sort of a single data source instance that you have added in Grafana. And that those filters will be automatically applied to that data source. Right now, this feature is only working for Elasticsearch and InfluxDB. We'll try to add them to more as time goes on. It's also actually working with the Kentek data source. Thanks to them for sort of helping us develop this feature. So yeah, I'm kind of excited about this feature. It can be further extended, and I'm just looking forward to seeing some new types of dashboards that weren't possible before. Another feature that is just a minor touch, or it's but it's still something I really like. So if you look at the top navigation, so this top bar with the dashboard, search, stars, actions. If you look at that, see if I can trigger this. Do you see it? It's a sort of subtle animation that sort of everything fades away, that you can interact with the buttons, the stars, the settings, everything kind of fades away. And Grafana will actually automatically switch to this view mode if it hasn't detected any user activity for more than a minute. It will sort of automatically switch into this sort of TV mode or view mode. And this is sort of something I kind of have been wanting to do for a long time, because Grafana is so frequently used on big TVs, displays, or on static displays where you don't interact that much with it. And in that case, sort of all these sort of star, share, buttons, settings, zoom, are sort of just cluttering the interface. So I thought it would be really neat if Grafana could automatically detect that, okay, no one is really using me right now. I will go into this more clean view mode. The nice thing, the thing I really like about this feature is that it's sort of automatic. You don't have to discover it. There is a shortcut, which I'm using right now, called DV, which will sort of trigger it as well. But otherwise, it's automatic. It will just enter it with after a minute of user inactivity. There's also a kiosk mode, which which just hides the top nav automatically. That is something you have to use a shortcut for. DK. It's useful if you sort of really want to sort of stop users from being able to navigate their way or changing the time range. There's actually a ton of these new shortcuts, the thing that's really new is that there are these sequence-style shortcuts. I'm not sure if you can see, but you can sort of use GH to go to home dashboard, GP profile, and the things. A couple of that I really like is SH to open search with the starred filter already applied, or ST to open search with the tag view. So there are a bunch of these shortcuts. Another one that I really like is just being able to enter edit mode with E. So whenever you hover over a panel, you can type E or V to go into edit mode or view mode. So you don't have to do those double clicks, hitting the small title and then hitting the edit button. You can just hover over the panel and hit E. I don't have time to go over all the shortcuts, but just either hit a question mark on your keyboard, or you can find all the shortcuts in the shortcuts menu option here. So lastly, we tried to do some UX improvements. We worked on both sort of making it easier to work with dashboards and build dashboards, and especially for new users. We had internally a project we called sort of Kill the Green Alien, which was what we nicknamed the row menu, which is sort of probably the biggest sort of stumbling block for new users, is sort of understanding that that's how you add new panels or interact with a row, and so it kind of became this sort of thing internally that we need to find a better way to work with rows and add panels and make it easier and more intuitive. So that led us down a sort of a path which we called build mode, which we later sort of discarded, but we really worked hard on this, tried lots of different variants on build mode, which would sort of make all the rows visible. You could see their extent. You could get sort of actions for add panel and row options and yeah, as I said, we tried different variants of this, and it felt a bit clunky. You had to enter and exit build mode all the time, and things jumped around, which kind of was disorienting. So we weren't really happy with it. So we kind of backpedaled on that idea, and instead we did a slight improvement on the green alien. We made him gray instead. So, but the hit area is much bigger, so you just have to move the mouse to the side of the row to trigger this row menu where you have row options, add panel, and collapse like before. It's a slightly more sort of nicer look to the add panel. You can just click, you don't have to drag and drop. But what you can do now, what you couldn't do before, is actually say, okay, I want a new panel here, and it will sort of, in this case, split that panel in two to make room for it. So we tried to make some improvements to that, working with rows and laying out dashboards. Also, if you go to a new dashboard, that sort of will be pre-expanded, so you can just go new dashboard, hit the graph, hit E to enter edit mode, and you're sort of ready to go. We also worked on some making it easier for new users to get started, but that's going to be in the next release, I think. I'm running out of time because I feel like I want to have some questions as well. So let's do that. Let's do some questions. Yeah, I will repeat the question. So the question was, the alerting feature does not support template variables. And that's true. You cannot use a query in your alert rule that use template variables. Honestly, it's quite tricky to sort of do it in a very intuitive way. So what does it mean? Should we just do all values in that template variable, or should we sort of do the one you have saved the dashboard with? And so it was a lot of sort of complications in supporting template variables that we felt sort of we didn't want to deal with right now. But it's probably something we will try to address at some time, but it's not a top priority within the next couple of months, I feel, because it has so many problems with it that are tricky to make it sort of very reliable and intuitive. More questions? So the question was an HTTP call to do the alerting, but what do you mean? Do the notification or do the evaluation? The notification. But we have a webhook notification as well, set so we can sort of build your own system that handles the notification part. Nice. So when you add notifications, we support Slack, email, and also PagerDuty and webhook. And webhook can be sort of anything you build that wants to receive those alert state changes. And you will get full sort of metric metadata and access to the image URL that captures the panel as well. The question was if we plan to have a column to allow stacking panels to create more sort of interesting layouts. So one of the big limitations right now is sort of all the rows are kind of sort of panels have to be basically the same height in a row, and that's definitely something we want to address next year, or I mean, when we find time, is to make the layout engine more capable because it feels very sort of clunky and a bit old school if you look at more modern dashboarding software. But yeah, one step at a time. But it's definitely something we've discussed internally. Okay, sorry, we're out of time. But sort of hit me up during a break if you want more demos and questions.